let's talk about partial preterism. And this text alone already debunks the issue of full preterism, in my opinion. All right? Partial preterism. What do they believe? I kind of think it's a heresy. To be honest, full preterism. This one is worse. Partial preterism managed to make the problem even worse. For partial preterism, all the events in Revelation are in the past. The whole book of Revelation was fulfilled in 70 AD, except for the second coming of Christ. Stop and think about that. Only chapter 19 is left. Stop and think about that. So, hold on. Seals, trumpets, and bowls were all fulfilled back in 70. Then, the coming of Christ is not explicitly detailed within the book of Revelation itself. Instead, all the profound prophecies that intricately match up with the events described in Revelation, such as those found in the ancient books of Zechariah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Hosea, they all seem to have been fulfilled and left behind in the historical past. So there's no prophecy that talks about the second coming of Christ. Wait, I don't get it. Yeah, so something is really wrong here, folks. Not even by allegorizing can you make this separation. You don't know. There's no prediction for when Christ will return. Yeah, and there is no prediction. So let's draw it out. Let's draw out partial preterism. Everything's in the past. What? What's in the past here? Hold on. What's in the past here? We have the first coming, which is at the cross, where Jesus Christ made the ultimate sacrifice for humanity. We have 70 AD, with all the events of eschatology and Revelation. And then, because they're there, the destruction of Jerusalem has to do with the apocalypse, right? And then we have the second coming at some point in the future, who knows when, because all the signs have already happened. So I don't have any sign for the second coming, because they've all already happened. So, good luck. Good luck. For them, the millennium has not yet occurred, so the fundamental principle of preterism is that every single thing was already completely accomplished at the cross, with the sole exception of the millennium itself. I'm going to stop trying to understand, because this could be bad for my health. Regarding the millennium and millennial theologies, what happens with preterism, the partial kind? How do you give that name to the millennium? Full preterists, they were premillennialists, right? Because Jesus had already returned here before, so prior to the millennium, they are premillennialists. Now, partial preterists, since the coming is after, they are postmillennialists, millennialists, because the millennium comes, the coming is after, the millennium comes, the coming is, no, wait. Because they're in the millennium now, so Jesus didn't inaugurate the millennium. Is that it? They are after the millennium. Jesus comes after the millennium, okay? Yeah, that's right. That's correct. We're already in the millennium and Jesus comes after the millennium. So it's still within preterism. The wolf, the lamb, and the child and the viper are playing together. But that's totally allegorical because there's no longer any literal interpretation. A literal interpretation of the scriptures becomes impossible. All right, everyone happy. So let's go. The only thing left here for the partial preterists is the second coming of Christ, and the interpretation is completely allegorical for everything. The apocalypse, everything, the whole Bible is allegorical. And then, if you sit down to talk with people who interpret everything allegorically, who's going to agree? Because the people who were there in the Middle Ages won't agree with those who are here today, and they won't agree with those from the early church. There's just no way to have agreement. Very, very good. Run from this one too, I'd say, because it'll make your head spin. Historicism. What do historicists believe when they read Revelation? They think it's being fulfilled from the first coming all the way to the second coming. In other words, there are already seals, bowls, cups, trumpets, Babylon. It's all in history. There's no order. Some things from Revelation already happened during the Protestant Reformation. Some things from Revelation already started. Something happened during the Spanish flu and the Antichrist. There are several of them, coming along with every pope you can imagine. Each one is more of an Antichrist than the last, from the historicist's point of view, because they're really anti-pope. So, we're already inside Revelation. Don't ask me which part, because I still haven't managed to figure that out. So, for you to see Revelation as spanning from the first coming until today, your interpretation needs to be, it has to be allegorical. So let's sketch out historicism. We have the first coming of Christ. We have the second coming of Christ, our present day. The second coming, for them, is still in the future. It hasn't happened yet. Revelation and eschatology have been unfolding since the cross. Everything is still in progress, and you can interpret any historical event as being something from Revelation. In other words, it has to be allegorical. There's no way it can be literal. It's impossible for this interpretation to be literal. This annoys me, this right here. I get irritated with this historicist here. Burn it, burn it. And what about idealism? They're also known as a spiritual or allegorical approach, talking about spiritual truths. So Revelation talks about spiritual truths, about the struggle between good and evil, the saints against the Antichrist. These are events from Revelation that apply to society in every generation, in every era. So, if every era has a Babylon, every era has a coming of Christ, every era has everything, people. Every era has an Antichrist, every generation. The interpretation of Revelation is obviously allegorical. Like fire fell from the sky, fire is never literally going to fall from the sky, because in all these schools here, it's allegorical. So it's suffering, it's a war, it's Jesus bringing judgment through some event, not always cataclysmic, sometimes just darkness. It's complicated because you can see anything you want in these events here. Revelation is made up of some really interesting events, right? They're very specific. That's it. So let's draw it out in idealism. We have the first coming, which obviously wasn't allegorical, right? Ask yourself this, why wasn't the first coming allegorical? And then we have the second coming, which only God knows what it will be, if it already happened, if it hasn't, if it's still happening, if it's repeating itself. And Revelation, along with the prophetic and eschatological texts, don't really exist, because there's no end, right? So it just keeps going, and going, and going, and going a little more. So, ad eternum, forever and ever and ever. The interpretation is allegorical and it fell apart. This was the one with fire. This was the one that set things on fire. I remember, I changed it. I thought it was too much judgment by fire, right? Since for them there's no literal fire, I figured it was better not to include the fire at all. Now let's get into futurism. I've already put here the historical futurism or historicist futurism, which I made up. This term doesn't actually exist, just to try to understand how futurists see the apocalypse. And of course, I'm giving you all a macro version, a big picture view, right? Because I have a book at home. Oh, look, it's raining, guys. Thank you, Jesus, for the rain that's watering our land. Yeah, there's a book like that. It's thicker than my Bible, that goes through the entire apocalypse with commentary. So it has the idealist column, the historicist column, the futurist column, and the preterist column. And it goes through what the preterist interprets for each verse of Revelation, and I wanted to bring some examples for you, but it's hard to translate. I wanted to find them. I would just put them in Google Translate and bring them here, because it would take me a lot of time. But the interpretations you read are shocking. You're left like, what kind of world did these guys live in? A world from 300 or 400 years ago. Today it's tough, but there are a lot of theologians. If you learn this in college, your eschatological view comes from that. It hasn't been reformed. That's a problem. Let's move on to historicist futurism. In my terminology, the apocalypse will be fulfilled in the future, but for those who are historicist, it has already begun, because I know people who believe we are already in the seals. There's no problem if you believe that, but it's no longer futurist. But that's okay. What else do futurists believe in? The apocalypse will be fulfilled before and during Daniel's 70th week, because now there are futurists who have already turned historicist. They've gone back to 1948. They've gone back to something in the 18th or 19th century. So, if you place the apocalypse 100 years earlier, you're no longer a futurist and you're no longer a literalist either. Now you're being allegorical, because the pure futurist view is a bit more literal. Even so, it mixes things up. Why? Because humans have a hard time believing in supernatural things. So, at first, this futurist interpretation is literal, but it's also allegorical because things aren't happening exactly in the order or the way they're written. So how do we draw this timeline here, then? First coming, our present day, the apocalypse and eschatology are, at first, in the future, but he no longer believes that the birth pains are within the apocalypse. He thinks they're a little bit before it. And maybe the actual birth pains are within Daniel's 70th week. But today, since everything is mixed up, do you know why it's all mixed up nowadays? We never even hear about this. Because today we didn't grow up in a purely Presbyterian church from beginning to end of our lives with a pastor who believes in one thing and always preaches that. Today we grow up, let's say you were born out in the world, then converted in a Presbyterian church, then went to a Methodist seminary, then went to a Newsite church to get delivered from the long-haired folks. So you already contradicted what the Presbyterians and Methodists believed about demon possession. And then you've already mixed everything up and you don't even know how to do biblical exegesis, how to interpret and figure out where the inconsistencies and consistencies come from, because the pure line doesn't contradict itself. It's coherent. The guy, he believes you're going to live in heaven and he's going to make you go live in heaven. And the rest of the whole Bible lines up with the idea that you're going to live in heaven. Forget that the earth is eternal. It's going to be destroyed, period. That's it. Forget that the New Jerusalem comes down, because we don't know the texts. We know the preaching of men. We don't go back there to question it. All right, the second coming is still in the future. Fine, it's in the present and in the future. And the interpretation, well, I actually think it's more allegorical, because it already, I don't know, I'm very literalist. You can tell, right? I'll explain why, but you don't have to be either. We can agree to disagree. And what about tribulational futurism? Here I'm going to share my perspective with you, okay? I'm a tribulational futurist with open boxes, and whatever God wills, that's how it'll be. So that doesn't exist. Okay, in theology, Revelation will be fulfilled in my future. I don't believe it's happened. The events haven't started yet, in my view. It will only be fulfilled during Daniel's 70th week, which is the tribulation week. You might be able to prove me wrong, but that's going to take a while, because if we're already in the seals, or if before the tribulation week there are chronological events from Revelation, like the seals, trumpets, and bowls of wrath, it's fine. My salvation is still solid, okay? But this is the framework I work with. Just so you know, I'm working within this framework, but the doctrinal boxes are open because there are things in the future that we need to wait to happen before we can close them. So how do I outline futurist tribulationism? First coming, in its usual place, our present day, and Revelation and Eschatology way ahead in the future. Just a reminder that when I say eschatology here, I'm mostly referring to the tribulation week, but there are some wars that might happen beforehand. There are eschatological texts that are part of setting the stage, preparing the scenario for Revelation. So these things will actually happen a bit earlier. It's hard for us to discern exactly what. In my view, the beginning of sorrows and the labor pains are all within the tribulation week. If you've already seen or attended our seminars, you'll notice that our timeline places everything within the tribulation week. Seals at the beginning of the week, midweek, the abomination of desolation, trumpets after that, and then in the last 30 to 45 days, we place the bowls of wrath. This is flexible, but for now we're working with this chronology. The second coming is somewhere, at a final trumpet within the tribulation week. This approach is more literal than allegorical. It's seeing things in black and white. Jesus comes at the last trumpet, and in Revelation there are 7. All right, there's only one that's the last. Good, that makes it easy. That's being a literalist, a bit simpler. I don't envy those who allegorize, because I find some of the allegorical theories really hard to grasp. I just can't understand them. Maybe that's why I'm not one, right? I have no idea where all that comes from. Anyway, it's definitely a more literal approach. Now, the Holy Spirit can turn to you and say, "Arise and shine, for your light has come." Of course, he can. The prophecy isn't for you, it's for Jerusalem. But the Holy Spirit can do it, and he does. Every day, he uses the scriptures to bring life to us, to give us direction, to give us instruction. What we can't do is forget the original context and purpose of that word. That's something we can't forget. We receive what the Holy Spirit has for us today, but we can't forget that there's a prophecy there that still has yet to be fulfilled. Here I think, look how beautiful. You have in your booklet either Introduction to Revelation or Introduction to the Plan of Redemption, which I don't have any more printed copies of, but I can send it to you as a PDF if you want. You pay and I'll send it. You've already seen my KX here. These are the courses, okay? Here's a quick summary. In preterism, you also have the interpretation, the second coming, and Revelation. In preterism, the interpretation is allegorical. The second coming has already happened. It came pre-millennium, before the millennium. We are already in the millennium in the past. Revelation is all back there, in 70 AD. It's already been fulfilled. In historicism, the interpretation is obviously allegorical. In the future, we have the second coming is in the future, after a tribulation. Today's historicist no longer believes this, because nowadays everyone is pre-tribulationist. They don't realize that in the theological line of historicism, the saints go through the tribulation because throughout all of history, when the Pope was the Antichrist, the saints died at the stake. It's weird, right, because they portray the Pope as killing the saints. So for them, there's no pre-tribulation. Everyone is going to go through the tribulation, because in the past, everyone did. So today, no one is better than the people in the past. Everyone will go through it. The apocalypse is happening now, because it's between the first and second coming. For classical futurism, the interpretation is more literal. The second coming is in the future. It comes before the millennium, prior to the millennium, because the millennium will be inaugurated by the second coming of Christ. And this apocalypse is primarily within Daniel's 70th week. In idealism, the interpretation is allegorical. The second coming is in the future. I don't know how, because with so much allegory, ideally he would have already come, right? Come soon, Jesus. But the second coming is in the future. It comes after a tribulation. The idealist also believes that the church goes through the tribulation and the apocalypse is in the present because it is cyclical and it continues until the second coming. And I forgot to give you today's handouts. Of course, I forgot. Did anyone have any doubts? How sad. You could already be scribbling on them. You on the internet have them too. Look, this one is what we've already covered. Can someone help me, please? Yeah, just don't give out mine, the one with my name on it. These are the outlines. We're missing some, right? There you go. Oh, it's here. Can you help me, please? Just this one here can't be given out. On this side, everything is. And what's next here on my slides? What are we going to look at now? I know what it is now. Oh, this is the upgrade. Are there any more volunteers for this task? One of each of these. Just don't give out mine, please. The one with my name on it. It's on the other side. Get it from the other side. And this one too. So, you guys on the internet, what you can download is this one here. We've already looked at it screen by screen. All good? Is someone from the team missing? And now, if you're online, if you can, go ahead and download this one and put it somewhere easy to find. Put this one somewhere easy to find too. If there's any theologian watching, cut me some slack, because this is really hard to understand, okay? Very difficult. And it seems like every theologian, describes this in a totally different way. It's pretty hard to compile, so I made a compilation within my abilities, which aren't always very good, so you give me a break. If you can also get this one. And these are the last two we did. Good morning, my dears, who said good morning to me here. Welcome. Parangaba. I don't even know where it is. Is it the inside of something? Oh, how delicious. I accept invitations. I love the interior. Yes, there are ministries that preach preterism. You won't know. You won't. You'll never hear that name. I know leaders who are preterists here in Brazil and who kind of came out of the closet when foreigners came and thought about ministering about it. When they found out they were going to minister about this, they were quickly canceled. And so they keep preaching this in other ways, without saying that Jesus has already returned. Most theologians who live the kingdom today, the kingdom now, are preterists. Do you know how this started? It's unfortunate, because the kingdom now, it really is now. We are living the kingdom now, but not the kingdom in the fullness of the second coming. Otherwise, something is really wrong, right? Those who preach the kingdom now, they emerge to correct a doctrinal error. Back then, believers used to think about being blessed and living in the kingdom only after death, in glory. So, here, life was sad, it was depressing, it was miserable, it was terrible, it was a horror. And then, people would read the Bible and say, but isn't there something that's meant for today? Why aren't we living this blessing today? God's glory today, the outpouring of the Spirit today, prosperity took everything today. And then they pulled everything into the present and threw away the future. So, in the past, everyone was just extremely focused on the future. They didn't know how to live the glory of the gospel now. Then they tried to correct that mistake, but ended up falling into another one. They put everything in the present, with nothing left to be fulfilled. So you read and you say, wow, but I'm experiencing a lot of glorious things today. But is that it? Like, is there nothing more? Is there no more glory? Because the glory is already here. So they ended up making a mistake while trying to correct another mistake, right? Unfortunately. Let's take a look at the different lines of interpretation about the millennium. Let me see which one is going to be the slide we're going to use. I think we're going to put something together like this, okay? I think it's this one here. And maybe you'll need to make a few corrections there, because I only printed that one about 4 times, okay? So there's the first version, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. Let's go. What are the lines of interpretation? Where's my clicker? Thanks. What are the lines of interpretation? How many are there? There are 3, the lines of interpretation of the millennium. But what a boring class. Why do I need to know this? Because you're going to walk into a church and you'll be able to identify what the pastor is preaching. You'll know what his theological stance is. You'll know how he's interpreting the eschatological texts. Ugh, I don't want to know about this. Then don't learn it. Oh well, but stick around, because we're going to learn how to interpret the scriptures, because these people here interpreted them. We're going to learn how to interpret as well. I'll give you some tools for that. We have amillennialism, postmillennialism, and premillennialism. You've already heard a little bit about them now, right? Premillennialism is because the coming happens before the millennium, it comes beforehand. Postmillennialism is because the coming happens after the millennium. Let's understand this. Amillennialism, the word usually means without, like atemporal, outside of time, without time. So, amillennium would mean there's no millennium, but that's not really the right term. It should actually be nunc. Nunc, which I don't know if it's Latin or what, but it means now. Millennium now. That should be the name of this view, amillennialism, because for them, the millennium is now. Postmillennialism says that Christ's return is after the millennium. So, we are already in the millennium as well. And in premillennialism, Christ's return happens before the millennium. If you believe that Jesus hasn't come back yet and that we're not in the millennium, then you're a premillennialist. At least in that sense, but don't box yourself in here either, because unfortunately, there isn't much good in this camp either. These frameworks apply to chapters 20, 21, and 22 of Revelation. The concept of the millennium, a significant period of time, spans extensively from chapter 20 all the way through to chapter 22 within the framework of these specific theological interpretations and understandings.